Hi everyone, number one Marmaduke fan here. I picked up the number one of Spider-Man Master Plan. At first I was just interested in how exaggerated and spidery the cover was by Stockman, and then I flipped through it and I saw a reprint of a Steve Ditko story, Amazing Spider-Man number two. So that made it a much easier buy if I knew I was getting a whole Steve Ditko story. So the artist for this one is Nathan Stockman, and what I'm going to say is that there's some fun, spider-like, action scenes to it, and Stockman has a fun cartoony style that fits Spider-Man and his personality, but it's got that same cringy dad joke humor that plagues a lot of Spider-Man stories. So if that annoys you, at first I was trying to be forgiving of it, but the bad teehee humor just got on my nerves progressively. But if you can come up with your own awesome one-liners for Spider-Man in your head as you read, or just ignore Spider-Man's word balloons, then this might actually be a pretty cool little Spider-Man adventure story. In the opening scenes, there's this cool little scene paying homage to the 60s theme song where he stops a yellow car with his webbing. So I chuckled a bit at that. And apart from that, it was just sort of, well, yeah, it was kind of cool because Spider-Man figured out that there was a strange number of crimes happening, and this turned out to be part of a larger plan. So it was Spider-Man being cool and fighting tons of crimes, but let I was let down by the cheesy humor of it. So skipping forward to Steve Ditko and Amazing Spider-Man number two, I thought this would maybe make an interesting compare-contrast where I could say, oh, in the Steve Ditko book, he's so much cooler than in the cheesy new book. Spider-Man actually doesn't have a lot of cool one-liners or anything like that in this era. He was a straight adventure dude at this point. And this actually is kind of a story where he's not a sad sack who's always a loser all the time like he is in some. He does really well in this, and he comes off really cool, and that's the point. He's a cool adventure guy. So there's even a little bit where Flash Thompson is roasting him. Hey bookworm, take a look at what's going on in the outside world, or can't you read anything but scientific formulas? So solid roast from Flash, and then Pete's response is essentially, at least my head isn't muscle bound, but he's given Flash back some flack. It's not a great comeback, but it's the kind of comeback a bookworm nerd would come up with. So even though he's not roasting the hell out of Flash, it's still he still comes off not as a simp. He's not just a doofus who can't do anything right or is constantly apologizing for what a goofball he is. I think it was the Amazing Spider-Man 500. Is that the one I'm thinking of, where he relives all his terrible experiences and all his near-death experiences? And that one struck me so much because I read all these Steve Ditko stories and I remembered most of these situations. And this is a pretty neat life or death situation that he has to find a way out of because he's out of webbing. He's out of he can't wall crawl. It's such a slick environment, so he has to think creatively about how to use his powers, dive down, get some leverage, dive up. It's cool, and it looked cool in Amazing Spider-Man 500 too. I forgot. Was that John Romita Jr. illustrating that one? I've got to go find that again. Golly gee willikers. But what was amazing about that comic is it gave so much of his history and paid homage to scenes like this, but even gave scenes like this more impact in retrospect. It was one of those comics that made this comic, which I loved as a kid, seem even cooler, because then later they harken back to this moment, and what a neat life or death experience it is. But here it's just played as sort of a quick action scene for an action character. He comes off fun, he comes off cool, he saves the day. This was the early years of these characters where they were very simple, very straightforward, very inventive. So this alone, I think, I had all these already. I had reprints of them in little trade paperback editions of them. But if you just want to flip through a floppy comic with Steve Ditko, yeah, go get this. What this reminded me of is I've talked before about my old Christmas present of all the digital editions of Spider-Man on CD, where they're not digital recreations of the comics, but they're scans of the actual physical floppies. So I'll never be able to afford Amazing Fantasy 15 or Amazing Spider-Man number 1 in my life, but I can go read a digital scan of those rare highly prized comics on that CD collection. I'm sure that's not available anymore. Now that I've found that, it might be fun for me to go through the originals, looking for neat little gems, fun time capsules of the Amazing Spider-Man, the kind of stuff that gets left out of, you know, modern editions. I could look for interesting letters to the editor. I'm so excited because when I got it as a 13-year-old, I just read the stories and skipped over everything else. But now that I'm really interested in the character and the character's history, I think I'm going to do some more Spider-Man related videos looking back at the time where I loved the character rather than continuing to buy new books of the character and continuing to be disappointed. But definitely, I'm definitely going to throw some respect on Stockman. That it's not, it's a cartoony style. It's not the most polished style, but Spider-Man's expressive and fun. I think Stockman's one I'm going to watch. I did it again. So, number one Marmaduke fan. We're the least professional show on earth. That actually is a good stopping point for me because I was starting to go on tangents. Oh, by the way, I'm going to be giving this one as a prize if you, for someone who does a drawing making fun of anything on this channel or any kind of drawing inspired by this channel recently, including, I don't know, maybe me cursing the darkness or sitting in my closet and forgetting that the light turns off. I love you guys. I'm number one Marmaduke fan. Win this comic by doing a drawing, and I'll catch you guys later.